All right, time for another one of the Roo Tales, and today we're going to talk about how a guy called Hollywood learned about electricity. Now, years ago, I worked for a place, and we'll just call it Can't Swing It Steel, and this was in Southern California in a little town not too far inland. So, anyway, we had this fabrication shop, and a good bit of it was outside. Some of it was sheltered. But if you know anything about Southern California mornings, they can get pretty damp. I mean, it may not be raining, but it can be misty and damp. And so we had this guy that worked for us, and well, he was just that good looking that he looked like he belonged in Hollywood. So Hollywood was a fitter, and he went out one morning and he took this little BuzzBox welder out to where he was working, because that's what we used to tack the plates in place. And when he got out there, he hooked it up, put the ground on the beam, and then without really thinking very much, he had the stinger in his hand and he turned the electricity on, and he reached over without thinking and he grabbed hold of the beam. Well, when he grabbed hold of the beam, that little AC welder ran the electrical current right through him, because it was following the line of least resistance, and it lit him up like a Christmas tree. And he had his one hand on the stinger and had his other hand on the beam, and it just, because it was an AC machine, it just shook him. And so Hollywood couldn't move. He just was gripped there by it until somebody came along and pushed him hard enough to break the connection. They pushed him onto the ground, and then he got up, dusted himself off, and, well, had to go switch the machine off and learned a few things all at one time. So Hollywood learned a lesson about electricity. When you're in, and it's something that you need to be aware of, we all need to be aware of. We're all in conditions a lot of the time outside. You may be out in the field. You may be using a welder on a damp day, maybe during the wintertime when it's snowing or it's been snowing and the moisture's still in the air. So you want to be consciously aware of what you're gripping and where you're gripping, and especially when electricity is running through a particular area, to make sure not become the ground yourself, because that's exactly what Hollywood did. He became the ground himself, and because it was the kind of machine it was, it gripped him pretty hard and lit him up pretty good. So that's a condition that you need to be aware of, and it's just a matter of knowing how electricity is going to act. Electrical current tends to follow the line of least resistance, and if you are the best contact, then that electricity is going to go through you if you have established yourself as a better ground than the ground that's attached to whatever else, wherever else the ground clamp's hooked up to. So after that, we didn't call him Hollywood anymore, we called him Sparky. But it's a lesson to learn. Remember that the climate does affect how electricity is going to act, and make sure to be aware of the conditions that you're looking at when you are hooking up your grounds and setting up your stingers so that you can do welding, especially during climate conditions that are not perhaps the best or the driest. And don't end up like Sparky.